we're diving into a little known corner of Ottoman history today. Most of us, we picture Istanbul, maybe Egypt or the Balkans when we think of the empire.
Right. The usual suspects.
Exactly. But get this. There was a really significant and frankly quite surprising influence wielded by people of Georgian origin, yes, from the Caucasus in Ottoman North Africa. We're talking the 18th and 19th centuries. It's a fascinating story, and I think it's likely new territory for many listening.
Absolutely. I mean, the idea of enslaved individuals rising to prominence in the Ottoman system, it isn't entirely unfamiliar. We think about the Mamluks, especially in places like Egypt and Iraq.
Sure, that's more known.
But the degree to which Georgians specifically shaped events in Tunis, Algeria, and Tripoli during this period, that's a captivating and often overlooked part of the whole Ottoman story.
Okay, so let's try and unravel this hidden narrative then. Our mission really in this deep dive is to explore how these individuals from Georgia actually found their way to North Africa.
Yeah, the journey itself.
And the diverse roles they played, within these Ottoman provinces. And ultimately, what their experiences tell us about the broader dynamics of the Ottoman Empire and its relationship with the Caucasus.
And to really get a handle on this, we've drawn from quite a wide range of sources. You have to imagine sifting through archival documents from the era itself.
Real primary stuff.
Exactly. Personal memoirs, which offer these amazing glimpses into individual lives, official correspondence going back and forth across the Ottoman administration.
Wow.
And of course, the meticulous work of historians who've pieced this puzzle together using materials in all host of languages. Arabic, Turkish, Georgian, English, French, Italian, Russian, and it's a truly international investigation.
Okay, so to set the stage, how did Georgians even enter this picture? What were the conditions like back in their homeland that sort of pushed them into the Ottoman world?
Well, sadly, the Georgian territories faced considerable instability between the 17th and 19th centuries. They were often a battleground between larger regional powers, you see.
Right, caught in the middle.
And internal strife also contributed to a really volatile environment. This vulnerability meant the population was susceptible to enslavement, not just by foreign invaders, but, tragically, sometimes even by their own local elites.
Really? By their own people?
Yes. There's this grim quote from a Georgian publicist at the time describing seeing wagons packed with their own young peasants being sent off to markets in Ottoman and Persian lands. It paints a pretty bleak picture.
It certainly does. So for those who were enslaved, what were the routes? How did they end up eventually in North Africa?
The main route was through the major Ottoman slave markets. Istanbul was a key hub, a central point.
Okay.
From there, individuals, often younger people who showed, particular promise or talent, were purchased by agents. These agents worked for the provincial rulers and the elite in places like Tunis, Algeria, Tripoli.
So they were actively scouting?
Pretty much, scouting for talent, essentially, to strengthen their administrations and their military forces.
It's interesting, though, that you mentioned Georgian historical memory seems more focused on the Mamluks in Egypt and Iraq. Why do you think North Africa might have been sort of left out of that picture historically?
That's a really insightful question. Historically, research within Georgia naturally focused on regions where Georgian influence was, let's say, more readily apparent, better documented.
Made sense.
The connections to North Africa were less direct. It required a deeper dive into Ottoman provincial archives, the work of Arab scholars, Western scholars. It's a field that's really gained traction, I'd say, in recent decades. So it's relatively recent, even within Georgian historiography itself.
Right, a newer area of focus. Now, you've mentioned Tunis, Algeria, and Tripoli, these Ottoman pashaliks. Can you give us a quick sketch of what these regions were like then? What drew people there, including enslaved people?
Okay, so these were provinces of the Ottoman Empire, yes, but they had a significant degree of local autonomy. Activities like maritime raiding, privateering were common.
Ah, the Barbary Coast idea.
Kind of, yes. And that created a demand for manpower, especially naval forces. The Ottoman recruitment system in these areas was quite adaptable. It drew in people from all over the empire and beyond, including enslaved people who were often brought in young and specifically trained for military or administrative roles.
Okay, let's zoom in on Tunis first then. You mentioned a significant Georgian presence there. What does the research show us?
Well, interestingly, we see traces of individuals of Laz origin, that's a group from the southwestern Caucasus, closely related to Georgians in Tunis as early as the 17th century.
That early?
Yes. We have records of Ottoman officials with the surname Laz, like Al-Hajj Muhammad Laz. He even served as Bey of Tunis for a while in the mid-17th century. So this early connection, it might have set a sort of precedent,
The pathway, maybe?
possibly, for later arrivals and the growth of a broader Georgian presence.
And then you have rulers like Ali Pasha and Hamuda Pasha actively buying slaves from Istanbul. Was there something specific about Georgians they were looking for?
It certainly seems they were highly valued. Ali Pasha, who ruled from 1759 to 1782, he even had a Georgian wife, Mahbuba,
Oh, interesting.
and she became the mother of two subsequent Tunisian rulers. That's a clear sign of the influence Georgians could achieve. Both Ali Pasha and his son Hamuda Pasha made it a practice to purchase slaves in Istanbul and then promote the talented ones to prominent positions in government and the military. It became a kind of characteristic of the Husainid dynasty ruling Tunis.
So even if the numbers weren't maybe as huge as in Egypt or Iraq, the Georgians in Tunis still held considerable power.
Precisely. The total number of Mamluks in Tunis during this period, 18th, 19th centuries, is estimated around 250, maybe 300. Not enormous,
Okay.
but a really significant portion were Georgian. The Tunisian historian Ahmad ibn Abi Diaf, he documented biographies of 34 Mamluks who served the Husainid rulers. And remarkably, 16 of them are identified as Georgian.
Wow, that's almost half.
Exactly, alongside a few Circassians and one Abkhazian. It's a really notable proportion.
That is a significant footprint.
Yeah.
Do we have some, really striking individual stories from these Georgian Mamluks in Tunis?
Oh, absolutely. Let's take Abu al-Fida Ismail Kahia, just as an example. He arrives in Tunis during Ali Pasha's reign with his brother. He rises incredibly high, even marries the ruler's daughter.
Okay, classic move.
Right. But then his story takes this dramatic turn after his patron dies. He falls out with the new ruler, Hamuda Pasha, has to flee Tunis. And his life then becomes this incredible international saga. He goes on pilgrimage, becomes an aide to a Georgian Grand Admiral back in Istanbul, fights in Egypt, gets wanted Pasha of Egypt, then Pasha of Morea in Greece.
No way.
Yes. Then he gets dismissed, exiled to Italy, and eventually has his titles restored with Austrian help. It's just this amazing global trajectory.
That's astonishing. It really shows how interconnected that world was.
It really does. And the opportunities and the risks, clearly for talented individuals within the Ottoman system.
Incredible story. What about some others, just to get a sense of their influence?
Well, there's Al-Shahir Mustafa Kuja, believed to be enslaved during an invasion. But once in Tunis, Ali Pasha spots his abilities, promotes him quickly. He also marries two of the ruler's daughters.
Okay.
And had considerable influence on policy, domestic and foreign, until he died in 1800. Then you have figures like Abu al-Rabi Suleiman al-Aval, served Ali Pasha and his sons in key roles. And Abu al-Najat Salim Kuja, he was a trusted diplomat for Hamuda Pasha, always traveling to Istanbul, neighboring provinces, on important missions.
It really sounds like they were deeply embedded right into the highest levels of Tunisian society.
They absolutely were. We see Abu Muhammad Rashid Kuja becoming chief treasurer. His brother, Abu Amma Hassin Yusuf, actually saved Hamuda Pasha from an assassination attempt.
Wow, high stakes.
Definitely. There's Abu Abdullah Muhammad Shalik al-Kurji. His path was different. He ended up exiled to Tripoli. But then others, like another Abu al-Rabi Suleiman, not only rescued Hamuda, but became chief of the armed forces and also married a ruler's daughter.
So marriage was a key strategy here.
Very much so. The list keeps going. Abu al-Baba Abba al-Jaziri, Abu Muhammad Kur ad-Din Kahia, who also married into the ruling family, Abu al-Nukba Mustafa Sahib Atabi. He was keeper of the ruler's seal, head of the Majlis. We even have ongoing research on him by one of his descendants today.
That's fascinating, seeing individuals start as slaves and reach these incredibly influential positions. You mentioned a sense of ethnic solidarity, too.
Yes, there is evidence suggesting a degree of solidarity among the Georgian and Circassian Mamluks in Tunis. Shared origins, perhaps common languages, could have fostered these networks of mutual support.
Which likely helped them climb the ladder.
Very likely aided their advancement within those power structures, yes.
And the marriage patterns, you touched on it, seem crucial for cementing their place.
Absolutely. The Husainid rulers strategically married their daughters to loyal, capable Mamluks. It wasn't just personal, it was a deliberate strategy. Consolidate authority, ensure loyalty.
Smart politics.
And we also see the Tunisian elite themselves seeking similar marriages for their daughters with these distinguished Mamluks.
What about Georgian women in Tunis? Were they also present?
Yes, the records clearly document Georgian women in the harems of rulers and the local elite. And what's particularly noteworthy is that the trade in Georgian females to Tunis continued well into the 1850s,
Really? That late?
even as the official abolition movement for slavery was gaining steam elsewhere.
And did these families maintain influence? Did the descendants play any later role?
There are indications, yes. Descendants seem to have retained some influence, even participating in events during the French occupation and later Tunisia's independence movement. The legacy wasn't entirely lost.
Okay, let's shift gears now. Let's turn to Ottoman Algeria. You mentioned some key differences there compared to Tunis.
Yes, Algeria operated under a slightly different administrative framework. The official policy was to appoint only Turkish officials to the highest posts. However, the definition of Turk in that context was quite flexible. It could even include European renegades who'd converted and integrated into the Ottoman system.
So Turkish wasn't strictly ethnic.
Not necessarily in practice, especially at certain times.
And the source of slaves was different too, wasn't it?
Exactly. Algeria relied much more heavily on slaves acquired through Mediterranean piracy and the big trans-Saharan African slave trade.
Okay.
This meant they didn't need to buy as many of the, frankly, more costly slaves from Istanbul. Those small numbers of Caucasians, including Georgians, were sometimes sent as gifts to Algerian rulers and elites.
But despite these differences, we still see Georgians rising to significant positions in Algeria.
Indeed we do. And some of their stories are quite remarkable. Take Hassan Kapudan Pasha al-Jazair. Born in a village in Georgia, kidnapped, raised near Istanbul.
Another kidnapping story.
Yes, a common thread, unfortunately. He gets recruited in Algeria, rises to become Bey of Tlemcen. But his career doesn't stop there. He moves back to Istanbul and eventually becomes the Grand Admiral, the Kapudan Pasha of the entire Ottoman Navy.
Wow, head of the whole Navy.
Leading forces against the Russians in major sea battles. His surname, Al-Jazair, the Algerian, reflects his time there, even though much of his big career was elsewhere. He died in 1790.
That's another incredible example. Georgian origin, starting in North Africa, reaching the absolute pinnacle of the Ottoman system. Any other standout Algerian stories?
There's Said Ali. He was the brother of that Ali at Tarabulus we'll talk about in Tripoli.
Ah, the connection.
Right. Said Ali served under Hassan Kapradan Pasha as vice admiral, commanding ships against the Russians. He later becomes Pasha of Anatolia, and even serves as Grand Vizier of the Ottoman Empire for a bit.
Grand Vizier, the top job, essentially.
For a brief but significant period, yes, in the early 1820s. His career is another powerful illustration of the potential for advancement, regardless of where you started.
And wasn't there even a Georgian who became the actual ruler of Algeria?
Yes, Hassan ibn Yusuf Ahiskavi. He came from Akatsike, a region with strong Ottoman ties then. He makes his way to Algeria through recruitment, serves in the Navy, distinguishes himself fighting off a Spanish invasion in 1775.
Okay.
He gets captured, but eventually returns, marries the Algerian prime minister's daughter, succeeds him, and ultimately becomes the ruler of Algeria from 1791 to 1798.
And didn't he have some interaction with the U.S.?
That's the really fascinating part. We have records of letters exchanged between him and George Washington.
It's out.
Seriously, highlighting Algeria's interactions with the brand new United States during his rule, it really underscores Algeria's place on the world stage back then.
That's an amazing connection. A Georgian ruler of Algeria writing to the first U.S. president. Any other notable Georgians in Algeria?
We also have Ali Kouja, ruled Algeria 1817-1818, from Ingrilia, western Georgia, described as wise, educated, but also quite despotic. He actually initiated a revolt against Ottoman rule, expelled Turkish soldiers. He had ambitions, maybe for his own dynasty, but it was cut short tragically by a major epidemic.
So similar pattern to Tunis Georgian women in Algerian harems, too.
Yes, the sources indicate their presence in the harems of rulers and the elite there as well. And just like in Tunis, Georgian slaves were sometimes gifted by the Pasha to loyal governors elsewhere as a sign of favor.
Right. Okay, finally, let's turn to Ottoman Tripoli. What role did Georgians play in this pashalik?
Tripoli, much like its neighbors, saw foreign converts and enslaved individuals rise high. Including some from the Caucasus, there was even an Abkhazian ruler, Hussein Abaza Pasha, in the late 17th century.
Okay.
But what's particularly surprising, maybe unique about Tripoli, is the role Georgians played in diplomacy.
Diplomacy, how so?
Venetian diplomatic records mention 2 Georgians serving as ambassadors for Tripoli in Europe. Hassan Gurji, ambassador to Venice in 1770, and Ibrahim Gurji Aga, ambassador to the UK in 1773. He even had an audience with the British monarch.
Wow. Georgian diplomats representing Tripoli in London and Venice. That definitely catches you off guard.
It really does. Shows the unexpected paths people could take.
And we also have that intertwined story of Ali at-Tarabulus. His brother was the vice admiral in Algeria, you mentioned.
Yes, Ali at-Tarabulus, also known as Burgle, sold into slavery in Algeria with his brother Said Ali. He rises to head the Algiers port, marries a relative of the ruler,
Right.
but after his master dies, he flees to Istanbul, manages to get a decree appointing him Pasha of Tripoli in 1793.
Okay, power play.
His rule there was apparently quite tyrannical, led to conflict with Tunis. He gets removed. But his story isn't over. He joins fellow Georgian Mamluks in Egypt fighting Napoleon's forces,
Still going.
serves as an advisor in Syria, and then, remarkably, gets appointed Pasha of Egypt himself in 1803, only to be assassinated shortly after.
Roller coaster.
The parallel lives of him and his brother really highlight how connected these North African provinces were and how tied into the wider Ottoman world they remained.
And then there's Mustafa Gurji, another influential figure in Tripoli.
Mustafa Gurji, yes.
Yeah.
Very influential statesman there, first half of the 19th century. He's even mentioned in connection with the capture of the USS Philadelphia in Tripoli Harbor in 1803.
Ah, the famous incident.
Exactly. He was detained in Italy later, but returned, became head of Tripoli's harbor, married the ruler's daughter, effectively oversaw the province. Even after the Ottomans reestablished direct control in 1835, he kept serving the government. And notably, he funded the Gurji Mosque in Tripoli, built in 1832.
So leaving a physical legacy, too.
Yes, he remained prominent until his death sometime after 1846.
We also had a quick mention of a Georgian governor way down in the Fezzan region.
That's right. Mustafa al-Ammar, identified as a Georgian renegade, served as governor of Fezzan province south of Tripoli in the 1820s. Just another indicator of the reach of Georgian influence within that pashalik.
And what about Georgian women's experiences in Tripoli? Any stories there?
There's one quite touching story of Georgian sisters sold to a Tripolitan diplomat by their own father. But they managed to keep contact with family, even helped bring their brother over to Tripoli. And one sister, Lila Amnani, after her husband died, she enjoyed the ruler's protection, had significant property. It suggests, some degree of social mobility, some agency, even within the harem system.
It's truly remarkable when you piece together all these individual stories. You start to see this larger pattern emerging, don't you?
Absolutely. What we've really uncovered here is a significant, yet, as we said, often overlooked, presence of people of Georgian origin right across these three Ottoman North African pashaliks, 18th and 19th centuries.
And they weren't just minor players.
Not at all. They played diverse, critical roles. Everything from enslaved laborers right up to high-ranking military officials, administrators, diplomats, even provincial governors. Their impact on the political, military, social landscapes of Tunis, Algeria, Tripoli, it was undeniably significant.
And just as we hoped at the start, these individual journeys, they really do illuminate the complexities of the Ottoman Empire, don't they? It wasn't this single uniform thing. The stories of these Georgians really underscore that fluidity of identity, the potential for social mobility that existed, even if it started from enslavement.
Right. And it highlights the far-reaching consequences of big historical events like the slave trade, which could, paradoxically, propel individuals to positions of considerable power thousands of miles from home.
And for you, listening, we really hope these narratives have maybe provided some of those aha moments, revealing these unexpected connections, these hidden histories that just deepen our understanding of the past.
Because these weren't just isolated incidents. They represent a really significant movement of people, of influence, that has often been missed in the broader picture.
So here's a final thought maybe to leave you with. Reflecting on these extraordinary lives, people like Hassan Kapudan Pasha, Said Ali Kuja, rising so high in foreign lands despite their origins, what does their success tell us about ambition, about opportunity, maybe about the very nature of power in the 18th and 19th centuries?
And perhaps what other unexpected diasporas, what other individual stories might still be out there waiting to reshape how we understand history in similar kinds of profound yet often unseen ways.